All right. Welcome, everybody. I thought we were waiting for a contingent from RSUQ. They must be on the roadside assistant. All right, look, welcome to Building Chatbot. Thanks very much for coming, and thank you for Something Digital. I think they're running a conference, a virtual conference this week, and they're running a bunch of sessions to pretty much educate, uplift people's skills within Brisbane around digital technologies. And I thought, from Black Book's perspective, we're probably pretty well known for robotic process automation, AI, ML. But I thought we'd do something a little bit different about chatbots or conversational UIs, right? So I guess the purpose today is not to discuss around the benefits of chatbots, but also not to discuss around implementations and security aspects of integration. So it's purely going to be focused on how do you design a chatbot to ensure that it appeals to the audience that you're talking about. And I think that's where the biggest issue we've seen with a lot of clients, where a lot of people were very early in deploying chatbots, and because it was like the cool kind of thing, like a lot of the banks pushed out a bunch of chatbots, a lot of the Telstra and all that kind of stuff, saying that, okay, well, we can replace a bunch of our contact center agents with chatbots, but a lot of them failed purely because people weren't adapting to a chat interface as opposed to a generic kind of contact center interface. So if I speak to someone, I want to talk to them about a bunch of things, as opposed to I can only talk to a chatbot about a single thing, and then sometimes it understands me, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of the chatbot technology initially came out of America. Americans speak a lot different than Australians, and then if we broaden Australia out into a much more multicultural country, a lot of the intents and a lot of the way we speak to each other are totally different to how Americans or Europeans speak to each other, which is why we've seen a bit of a decline in terms of adoptions of chatbots, but also a movement to kind of a hybrid approach where the chatbot, like if you've kind of liaised with Foxtel or Telstra, you'll have the chat doing the initial triage of what exactly you want, and then passing it on to an actual physical person to take on that chat. And we're seeing a lot more of that, as opposed to a chatbot doing the entire kind of conversation with a person. Cool. Agenda, we're kind of going to run pretty loosely. Probably run to about 9 o'clock, and then I'll throw over to Tobias. So you guys, if you brought your laptop, can start kind of building one. We're using a piece of technology called Druid. We don't there's a bunch of technologies out there, and we'll go through them in a second, but it's not something that we say, oh, you shouldn't use Druid because it's the best, but it's just something that's easy, it's available for the web, you don't need to download and install stuff, so yeah, cool. Okay. So the conversational design process, how I kind of see it is like we've taken the concepts of UI, UX design to websites and kind of inbuilt it into the way you design a conversation, so a chatbot conversation. So originally there's the 7 key steps that we kind of have a look at is about you need to identify the chat goals, right? So you can't just go out and say, one chatbot, one kind of conversation will answer all the queries that a contact center will potentially answer, or all queries that a customer wants to answer. So what you need to do is you need to kind of slice out a very unique example, so a very specific example. So if you're designing a chat interface, ideally what you would do is go, let's look at the top 10 queries that my contact center gets asked for. Let's see which ones are the easiest ones. So generally, where we see good ones are if the answer is, I'm looking for a piece of information, here's a piece of information, here you go. So where's status updates, or where is my claim up to, where is my loan application up to, as opposed to why things have happened. So it's like, give me an update as opposed to why this has happened to me. Generally, when you're looking at answering the why, you can go down to a bunch of down the wrong path, and therefore your customer will probably drop out of that chat conversation. We then look at user research and personas. So, and this is pretty important when you kind of design chatbots, is let's say you're building a chatbot for BCF, right? So your customer base is generally people are into camping and fishing, so your tone and the way you speak to them can't be the same as though you set it out formally, like in, say, a chatbot that's more banking kind of stuff. So think about the audience and the type of language that you're speaking to people about, because people kind of engage in the chatbot interface are really looking at, okay, well, I'm only using this because I don't really want to wait online to talk to a person or contact center, because I'm kind of like, I'd rather text someone and then in about 5 minutes I'm going to respond, and then I'll respond, as opposed to I'm going to sit on a call and wait to get the full story done. So that what they're looking for is a much more customized experience to talk to them in their kind of language. So if you're looking at your audience and you're looking at creating generic chatbots, it just doesn't work, because the language that you're trying to use needs to be tailored towards the customers that you need. And it's similar with websites, right? So when you're designing a website, if you're creating a leisure website, totally different to creating like a banking, finance kind of website from there. Topic mapping and design dialogue. So topic mapping is pretty important. So topic mapping is around understanding the topics that you're going to be asked, as I was talking about before, the goals, right? So you say, okay, my goal is that I want to look at reducing, designing a chatbot that's going to respond to customers when they come in and ask me about certain questions about where the status of things are in terms of the engagement. So where the status of my order, where's the status of my refund, those kind of things. So if we're designing a chatbot to provide status updates to a customer, the topics are around, okay, well, what are the things that the customer will ask me about statuses? So orders, refunds, complaints, payments, that kind of stuff. So those are the topics that you kind of go down. So therefore, if you start off with, I want to do status updates, what are the things that people want to ask me about status updates? So these are the certain things. Then you pretty much, you got your topics from there, and then basically from there you can kind of build out your chatbot from that perspective. Now the dialogue stuff. So dialogue, what we try to do, Dialog Flow is essentially a workflow that enables you to trim down the conversation that the person is talking to you about to get to the actual intent of the conversation. So a good example will be if someone comes in and types in and says, I would like to understand the status of my order. So already you know there's a status and order, then basically you want the bot to go, okay, the person wants to know that the status of my order, but how do I get more information to grab that detail out of my ERP system? So the status and order, so then you're going to go, can you provide, first of all, you probably need to do an identity check, right? So thanks very much, can you provide your the order number, your name, some other piece of information that generally a contact center person will ask. Then they'll provide that information. Based on that information, you then go and grab the order details out of the system. So how we kind of design dialogue flows is that look at the downstream system that you're grabbing the information out of. What are the general information that you need to enter into that system? Then you need to go, okay, how do I ask that information from the user in a way that is not too cumbersome? So you can't just go, all right, I'm looking for a status of a claim. I need 10 pieces of information. I'm not just going to go out and says, okay, can you provide blah, 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 blah. So ideally what you want to do is you want to go, thanks, Mr. Smith. Can I get your last name, phone number, date of birth, right? From there, when was the last time you did a claim? Then you kind of reduce the amount of information that you need to ask the person. Purely from the person's, when you ask someone to essentially go and give you 10 pieces of information straight up, they'll just go, bugger it, give me a form, I'll fill out in the form, and then submit the form and you get the request back. As opposed to, like, similar to a contact center, they'll ask small pieces of information and then grab and knit it all together and then enter it into the system to grab the information to come back. In addition to that, you can also, as you grab those little pieces of information, you can also trigger other systems to give you that response. So say, for example, you've got a claim system, but you've also got a CRM system that you need to kind of integrate with. Ideally, you would go, okay, give me your customer information. I'll go to the CRM system. I'll have a look at the last time you spoke to me. So therefore, you're not kind of going, okay, well, this is the first time Joe Bloggs has actually talked to me. If he's kind of come through and interacted with this chatbot about 10 times and this is his 11th time, you kind of go, well, hey, this is the 11th time this guy's come through. You might as well pass him in over to a physical person to talk to him, because I really don't want to kind of piss him off for the 12th time, right? So those are the kind of things you need to think about, as opposed to just ask the full every single thing, and then people just will drop out and they go. If I have to type, think about, I don't know, when you text or when you type in a conversation, people do a lot of shortcuts and they only type very small amount of information. They're not going to type a whole paragraph about themselves. And we'll go through a sample dialog flow and a user flow in a second. Responses is really good. So when we design the responses, we kind of want to keep the response as short and sharp as possible, because generally people don't want to go read a whole paragraph about how your day was and all that kind of stuff. All they want is to know, this is the answer to my question, thank you very much, off we go. But what we want to do also in responses is we also want to elicit that whether it was successful in the response. So that if it's the reason why we want whether it's successful or not is because we want to use that information to retrain the flow or retrain the chatbot. So if people go, no, that's not what I wanted, see you later. So ideally you want to go, okay, well, why did that person drop out? So therefore I can redesign the way I've asked that person the question moving forward, so therefore the next person that asks the same kind of thing doesn't drop out. So when you design responses, it's always to give people short, sharp responses, but also to ensure that you're capturing some kind of information that allows you to understand whether you've been successful in actually answering that question. Which is why you'll see a lot of the chat surveys, a lot of surveys come at the end. They say, oh, please take 5 minutes to do the survey, which people kind of exit out of anyway. But ideally, if you're trying to get people to do a survey, try and embed it into your flow, So say, for example, okay, well, your order is due on the 15th of December, whatever it is. Are you okay with that? Yes. If not, then go no. Then you go, okay, well, can we pass you on to a web chat agent or whatever the case may be? So some of the responses when you design are pretty critical in the way that how your bot improves moving forward. And they're really monitor and manage. And this is with everybody, even if you have agents, it's about being able to understand the right responses and the incorrect responses, and based on the incorrect responses, how do you redesign the way that the bot will respond. When we go through a couple of terms, you'll find a term called utterances. So an utterance is basically what you're saying. So hello, g'day, is from the bot's perspective, everything's mapped to a greeting, and then, okay, if I see a greeting, this is how I respond. In most of the time, so a lot of the bots that get dropped off, like out of the box bots, they won't know the term g'day because it's an Australian slang, or g'day mate, how you going, or whatever it is, right? So, or even GDAY. So when you see a lot of them and the bot says, okay, well, I don't really understand what you're talking about, which is generally you'll see when you're talking to Telstra, that information ideally gets put back into the system. So, okay, if the next time I see the word g'day, it is a welcome, right? So, or like, other cultures will kind of talk about different type of languages that come in. So you kind of need to be able to retrain the bot to kind of work around how do I respond based on the nuance of the people engaging in the bot. So this is where we go through a little bit more detail in terms of each of the steps. So in terms of the chatbot goals, you kind of need to ask, what are the pain points that you're hoping to solve by the chatbot, which is around historical frequently asked questions. So FAQs are really pretty good to start off with. So if you have an external facing chatbot, a good point to start is where you have a website that you have FAQs. So customer come on and they want to ask a bunch of questions and they generally go to FAQ. And generally, a lot of people start off with, if it's an external one, opening hours, store locations, how do I get things done? What services do you provide? where can I get certain forms, all that kind of stuff are pretty generic. And how you kind of find that is if you're running an externally facing website, you can get some website analytics to go where are actually people navigating to and how many clicks they're getting to it, right? So if you see a lot of your traffic going through your website, people are taking more than like 5 clicks to get the information, then you know that the information is too far embedded into your website for people to look for. Your search engine's pretty shit, and you need to change that. Or you can go, okay, well, there's a reason why it's embedded so far in the website is because I kind of don't want a lot of people to get to it, because it's kind of like, okay, well, maybe it's like a PDS or something like that. So that could be a good option for a chatbot. So we designed like a legal chatbot. A lot of where we started to look at some of the things was that people were asking a lot of legal questions that were easily obtainable inside the website, but there was a lot of logic in it. So we kind of said, okay, well, to get there, people had to answer a bunch of questions. So essentially we turned that into a bit of a dialogue flow for people to ask questions. So therefore we move them along the website without having them to without having to get them to navigate through the website. And then you need to go, okay, well, do you want an autonomous one, which are kind of, if you're not trying to do an FAQ straight answer, what are the opening hours, what are your products are selling, how do I get a loan, that kind of stuff, I would probably kind of move slightly away from this autonomous one, because your first bot, probably you want to kind of have a human in the loop. So if you're going down this path and you want to be able to go and transition yourself to a point where your customer is a little bit cheesed off, you want to be able to go, okay, well, click here to talk to a human. And we're seeing that's where the industry is kind of taking. Most of the contact center guys are moving to human-in-the-loop type chatbots, purely because they haven't done the whole design piece properly, but also they haven't kind of ensured that the information they're giving to the customer has been structured in the way that they can get it quite easily. So they're trying to, the why, there's a lot of why, increasing people asking why have you treated me like this? Why is my loan delayed? Why is my claim delayed? Why can't I get a refund from you? Purely because that information, they're trying to move away from the customer and have the human kind of explain to them from there. Okay. So user research and personas, this is where I kind of spoke briefly about before. So we're looking at who's going to be using your chatbot. Generally, you can have a look at people navigating through your website, or people kind of contact your contact center. What are the services that you're providing, and generally the demographic that's going to engage with your organization. And if you have an organization that might be doing multiple different demographics, so say for example you might have pet insurance, or you might have niche car insurance, then definitely you'll have different personas, and a lot of organizations are naming their chatbots in the different persona that they're engaged with. If you're internal one, so if you're creating like a finance chatbot, it'll have to be much more like financy, whereas if you're creating a HR chatbot, then HR chatbot is a much more human kind of, the finance chatbot will go, what do you want? Bam, here you go, here's your report, off you go. Whereas a HR one is, oh, okay, well, here are the kind of top 10 things that you need to go through and that kind of stuff. What are the goals? What's the context? What are the information around it, and how do they speak? So essentially, if you do the research of who's going to use your chatbot and what type of people they are, how do they ask questions, what do they want to achieve, then generally you're going to get a better performance out of the conversational UI that you're designing. Okay, topic mapping. Much more detailed. So basically what we're trying to do here is we're trying to map the request, essentially the unstructured natural language that a person talks to you about, to essentially exactly what is the intent asking. And because we're humans and we're smart, we generally combine multiple intents into a conversation. So I'd like to understand where my claim is at and when are you going to pay me, right? So if someone types that in, that's too intense. In the old school chatbots, the chatbots just get confused. What exactly do you want? Here's a bunch of options. And generally, you can't select two options, you just select one, right? So if you're designing a smart one, you would go, okay, well, generally the word "and" is found in the natural language, and "and" is a combining type word. So generally, I'll pull out, okay, what is the status of my claim, and so I want to know status claim, that goes down one path, and when am I going to get paid? So when paid, right? So that goes down. Once I get the claim and the status, I'll go back and I go, okay, well, the claim is about to be processed, and then I look at, okay, when is the payment date? So basically, if you can split a conversation into multiple topics, you'll be able to answer that person quite quickly, as opposed to going, okay, here's your status, and then the person will go, well, I did ask you when it was going to get paid, and then you have to go through the whole thing again, which is kind of a bad design. So you'll want to be able to go, these are all the things that the person asking me about straight up, as opposed to asking them again and again and again. Okay. So designing dialogue, we're harping on about this, is the same language as target users, and the personality should reflect the brand. And I think that's no different to the way that whether you're building an internal chatbot or an external chatbot, you need to appeal to the right kind of how people kind of want that information. Then we need to consider the positioning, which is the purpose of the dialogue. Does it inform users or it take action? So positioning is important. If you're just trying to inform a user, which is like an FAQ, is, I don't know, what are your opening hours? Okay, 9 to 5, right? Whereas taking action is more kind of, okay, where's the status of my claim? I want to submit more information for that claim. So if you're trying to design a chatbot to start to take action, then you're really looking at, okay, well, I want to ask from that person all the information that is relevant, so then I can do one single action to liaise with my downstream system to be able to process that particular action, that task that they want to do, which gets a bit more complicated, because if you think about the UI, the screen design of any ERP, a banking system or claim system, the way it's designed is that you don't enter information all in the front screen, right? You're going to go, think about like trying to process a purchase order. First screen in SAP, you enter your PO number. Second step, it goes to the next screen, you enter your goods receipt. Third step, you do price validation. Fourth step, approval, right? So it's never, you need to take all of that and put it into a conversational, like a chatbot interface. So you need to ask for your PO number. You need to ask for how many goods receipt that has been provided. You need to ask, okay, well, how do I handle price mismatch or quantity mismatch, right? So all that stuff needs to be put into, okay, well, step one needs to be, okay, well, I need to find the identifier, which is the PO number. Then I need to go, okay, how many items are you receiving? And then you need to go, okay, how do I manage the exceptions that are occurring out of that? So when you're kind of designing something like that, you kind of go, well, first of all, you go, is it really of value for my organization to redesign the way the downstream system into a chatbot interface? Or can you simply push people to that screen, right? So you can go, okay, well, if I come in as that, I want to receive my PO, or I want to get my PO paid, you go, okay, well, give me your PO number. Ideally, you get the PO number and you return a hyperlink to that actual screen within your system. Then basically people click on that and they go in, they do the steps, because all the validation exists in, say, your Dynamics or your SAP or your Oracles and all that kind of stuff. If you decide to take all of that out and put it in your chatbot, I kind of really don't recommend to do that. But sometimes people go, oh yeah, some people are like, okay, well, we don't want, external customers and all that kind of stuff doing that. Like, we want, say, a supplier to do all the, once they've shipped the item, we want them to do all the receipting, but we don't want them access to SAP. So in that instance, you kind of start, okay, well then how do I build that logic? And what I do recommend with that is a lot of the chatbots are starting to offer forms as part of that. So, okay, well, you want to receive this PO, click on the link, you get a form pre-filled with a lot of information that I've grabbed from SAP, and then you put the validation in there. Don't try and design a conversation UI about that replicates the validation that an ERP system does, because it'll inherently break. Proactivity. Around the proactivity is about being able to direct users to sit back and let the user guide the experience. So what we talk about here is about getting the user to be able to dictate what the chatbot does, which is kind of a little bit, if you're probably a bit more advanced than if you're just doing your simple chatbot. And this is where we will start looking at, okay, you're liaising with the chatbot, but you want the user to go, okay, well, I want to receipt this item, but I also want you to look for items that give me a report of unreceipted items. So as a good example would be finance chatbots, where you've decided to go, okay, well, I'm gonna build a chat interface so anybody in finance can do a journal, right? So, and then you go to the chatbot, okay, I want to do a manual journal to shift costs from this cost center to this cost center. Then you go, okay, well, if they can do that, I wanted to give them the ability to also run a report, right? So therefore, you're kind of moving them away from the system and giving them some options as part of their role. So as a management accountant, I want to do journals, but also sometimes I want to have a look at, based on that journal, what is the outcome of the report. So you're giving them options based on the role that they're providing in the system itself. It's a good design methodology, but you've got to work out, when you're trying to design those kind of proactive type dialogue flows, you really need to understand exactly how an account goes through their journal process, because generally they post a journal, they'll ensure that the journal's posted, they didn't run a report, making sure that dollars are sit there, right? So if you've mapped that all out, then you can pretty much ensure that they're getting that response as part of their chat experience, as opposed to having to go back and then starting the interface off and said, I want to create a journal, I want a manual journal, I want to put it in here, and then come back and say, oh, now I want to run a report. Oh, what report do you want to run? Ideally, you want to go post a journal, report's already run, here's your report, right? So you're kind of proactively thinking what exactly that person is requesting, and you're giving them a response before they even ask for it, which is like really good design principles. I'd say you probably won't want to consider that until you've got about 10 kind of chat experience going on and you fully understand what people are requesting. So ideally you go, as a general manager of this area, chatbot essentially sends you an SMS, end of the month, here's your P&L, and by the way, here's also a bunch of exceptions in your P&L. These are the areas you want to focus on, these are the links to drill down. So basically you're already understanding that, cool, get on the phone, drill into that kind of stuff, as opposed to the general manager having the meeting with the accountant, and they go through all those kind of stuff, and sometimes the accountant will tell you, oh shit, why is the cost going up in that area? Oh, hang on, let me run the report. Ideally, your chatbot should be able to do that all for you and give you that information. Okay. So designing user flow. So as part of the dialogue flow, you're saying what should happen as a result of users interacting with the chatbot. So to design the flow to lead them in the right direction. And this is where I was saying about grabbing up information so you can slice out the information so you can actually enter the specific data into your downstream system. So generally you start, and a lot of people will have, so there's a couple of ways you do chatbots. So you have multi-intent ones, so a generic chatbot that will kind of so essentially you'll talk, so the Telstra one is a really good one. Are you talking to me about these 6 topics? Which topic do you want to talk to me about? If I click topic 3, it actually passes on to another chatbot that actually goes, okay, I want to look at billing and refunds. Okay, it's actually going to push me to the different dialog flow to ask me exactly about billing refunds. So they knit multiple chatbots together to give you the right kind of answer. And from an experience perspective, you're only seeing one, but realistically underneath there's multiple ones of those. We spoke about ending conversation and transferring to a human agent, and you'll see that a lot. So the Qantas one's a really good one where some of them will get you to do a payment, but before you do a payment, you'll need to do some ID verification, and that's where they kind of pass to a human agent. Design responses, as mentioned before, we're looking at keeping answers concise. We're trying to inject personality into the chatbot, and we're trying to do failure. So how many times have you spoken to a chatbot where it comes back and says, I don't understand what you're trying to ask me, please select the options. And that's just part of the design process where we know once we launch a chatbot, it's never going to be 100% accurate. It's never going to be able to give you everything you want straight off the bat, because we haven't been able to map the way everybody talks into a topic conversation. We haven't been able to understand all the shorthand writing that people kind of message is typical, right? Like chatbots were designed to go, okay, well, if I was going to write up a perfect English paragraph, whereas people don't do that on a chat interface. They'll put a bunch of abbreviations in. So over time, we need to kind of embed those abbreviations in. But what we need to do is to go, okay, well, we're not going to get it all the first time. So we respond on failure saying that, hey, we don't understand exactly what you're talking about. You now have the option to click over here to talk to a human agent, or you guide us through by a bunch of like options or checkboxes that allows us to go down. And ideally, if you're clicking over to talk to your human agent, you'll kind of want to prioritize that person, because essentially the person's come in, attempted to deal with your chatbot, and now we push you over human agent, and by the way, you're at the back of the queue, the human, they'll just go, bugger it, F you, I'm going off. Here, okay, useful terms. So we're just starting to deal with technologies. These are the terms that people will come across. Utterances, which is really simple. It's basically things that a user would type. So I want to put a claim, I want my reports, I want to lodge a customer complaint, all that kind of stuff. So they're utterances. And where a kind of natural language processing or machine learning comes in is it allows you to enter a single utterance. So say for example, I would like to lodge a claim as a single utterance. Where the machine learning comes in is that it takes that sentence and it goes, what are the synonyms of that sentence that can come in? So lodge claim, so if you enter it in, and you'll see it in as part of the building thing, if you enter that in, it'll understand lodge claim, lodge, right? So it breaks it all down without you having to enter in every single different version of the utterance. And that's where kind of the AI comes in, about being able to enter one thing in once and the machine being able to understand exactly if you trying to like do shorthand writing. Intent, so you'll hear a lot about intent mapping. Essentially, what does the user want to do? What are they asking you? Fundamental meaning, grouping of multiple intents, as I was saying before. A good example is I'd like to request a refund on my bike purchase because I asked for a repair ticket but could not get a response in time I wanted. So in that instance, we've got multiple intents there. But the fundamental meaning of that kind of sentence is that user wants a refund. They don't want to know about the repair ticket, they don't want to know what the response time is. So badly designed bot will be able to go, we'll come back and ask them, did you mean that you wanted a refund? Or did you mean that you wanted the status of your repair ticket? Or did you mean that you wanted to get a response on the time that it would be repaired? So that's a badly designed chatbot, right? Ideally, you're just going to go, first one, request a refund, and that's the fundamental meaning. Dialog Flow, we spoke about that before. Essentially, is a workflow of a conversation based on an utterance, what is the intent, and the task the user wants the agent to do. Entities. So entities, you'll hear a lot about entities. So entities, breaking down, nouns or objects in a sentence. I want to lodge a claim for my car. lodge is the adjective, claim is the entity, and car. So the machine will pull out those. How kind of natural language works, very similar to English. Like, I was going through that course a while back, and I was going, I should have listened more when I was at school about adjectives, nouns, adverbs, and all that kind of stuff, because it's all it is. So it pulls it out and says, okay, lodge, claim, car. We know what it is a claim for a car, and they want to lodge it. Based on that, I want this information. So that's kind of the entity mapping. Traits are kind of interesting, right? So they're topics of backgrounds of a conversation. So how we use traits is we use traits to cater the conversations towards. So a good example of a trait is that like flight attendant refund or whatever the case may be. I want a refund for my flight. Generally, when someone comes in and asks for a refund, the trait they've come out is that, okay, well, the person does not want, you don't want to on-sell them stuff, because they come in, they want a refund for their flight, and there's a reason why they want a refund. So the trait is the background. So basically, generally a disgruntled user wants you to take action on a request that they've done, right? So if you know that, then you can create a flow to cater for the disgruntled user. You don't want to go, okay, here's your refund, but by the way, would you like to sail from Darwin to Brisbane or whatever the case may be? And that's just not good in terms of the way that you liaise. And generally, it's like you train your contact center agents to go, if our mate's coming in for a refund and he's disgruntled, you're not going to try and sell him additional stuff, right? So traits is an interesting concept that's been put into conversational UIs, and a lot of the new platforms are starting to go, it's really more almost the sentiment of the conversation, but also the background of where they've come from. So then you can tailor the conversations towards their needs. And really, the last one is the channels. So channels is essentially the methods of you deployed your chat interface. So we're talking about Messenger, Kik, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, SMS, web, email, right? So every single platform has a bunch of different channels that they push out on, whether you're looking at internal or external. So a lot of the internal ones will kind of try and push out through Teams, through all your kind of internal kind of chat interfaces. All the external ones, obviously all the social media channels, but what we're seeing now is that on the websites, there's a little thing that pops up in a little chat thing. People are getting away from that now. They're essentially coming in, and you go into your website, and essentially there's a Google bar that says that you type in. So it's not really a search bar. What they plug on the back of that is a chat interface. So it'll be, okay, if you're typing in, go to a website and go, I want to lodge a claim. Essentially, it's not doing a search. It's actually interacting back with the chat interface to go, okay, well, lodge a claim, start asking a bunch of questions, or present them with a form to do stuff. So people are getting away from the little pop-up. They're essentially building their conversational UI into their website itself. Starting to look at monitor and manage. I think we've kind of spoken about that before. This is probably relevant when you're starting looking at selecting your chat platform. Look at what is the best way to look at failed utterances, failed intent mappings, and then how easy it is to remap that one. So a lot of the platforms that I'll go through in a minute, they're still very technical, and then you'll have to get a technical resource to kind of retrain your understanding. Whereas some of the more mature chat platforms essentially allows you to go tick, 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 map this to this particular utterance, retrain, and then it just normally understands that from there. Okay, what's a good conversational design? I think we're kind of harping back on about this all the time, is about redesigning your bot to a user-centered approach. There's been like heaps of information about, human-centered design, UI, UX, and it's no different to when you're designing your chatbot. purely because it's about designing it towards catering towards your audience and understanding, what type of audience you're talking to, how frank they are in the way they speak to you, or whether they're much more amenable to longer conversations. If you have an audience if you have a bot that's essentially handling customer complaints, you don't want to keep that person answering 10 questions, right? You just want to go, here you go, here's a link, lodge a complaint, off you go. You don't want to be going, oh, what time did we stuff up? How did we stuff up? And then by that time, they'll probably go, F you, I'm just going to ring someone and lodge a complaint from there. So I think what we're saying here, after bad spread, 30% of consumers tell the company, 50% tell their friends, and then essentially, these are kind of graphics that are very similar to what other kind of good design experience people kind of talk about from there. Okay, chatbot platform, right? So kind of split between two. So you've got cloud, which is essentially the big boys in town. So you've got AWS, they've got Lex, Azure's got two, or Microsoft's got two. They've got the Azure bot service. You've got Power Virtual Agent, which comes with your Power Apps or Office 365 deployments. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Google Cloud, they've got Dialog Flow. Pretty cool. I don't know, a couple of years ago they came out with, I don't know if you saw the ad, can you book my hair appointment and all that kind of stuff. But underneath it, they kind of crafted it. It wasn't true, but the way that Google have kind of done the Dialog Flow is actually quite mature as opposed to all the rest of them. IBM Watson, they've got Assistant. Watson was first in the market. Reason why Watson was first in the market, they've got a really good natural language understanding platform, but it's kind of disappeared away. When I said okay, what chat platforms, they kind of originally started designed around how Americans speak. That's Watson. So Power VA, probably if you are a Microsoft shop, probably the easiest way to get into kind of building and deploying chat. Only works internally at the moment, unless you want to give your customers kind of Office 365 licenses, that kind of stuff. There's and I'll show you in a second. It's not as powerful as the other ones. It's kind of what I would call your the student version of chatbots, right? It allows you to play with stuff and make cool things, get it to troll SharePoint if you want, that kind of stuff. It's a good starting point, but if you want to do enterprise stuff, then the other ones are probably better. Then you've got your kind of your niche platforms. There's billions of them, heaps, there's so many of them, right? But kind of the ones that we've kind of dealt with, core, on-prem, we kind of deployed at Heritage Bank. Only reason why we did that was because it's an on-prem, can be deployed on-prem. A lot of people, especially in the banking, they don't kind of I don't want to really push my customer details or banking details or whatever it is out to a cloud service, but I think that kind of mentality is kind of gone now. But it is quite mature, and I'll show you through core in a minute. Cognigy, only reason why Cognigy up there, German company, if you got SAP, fully integratable with SAP, right? Germans speak German, so they stick together, understand each other, good mates, security, all that kind of stuff. Pretty good as well in terms of the way it's kind of been designed. Quite late to the market, but in terms of if you're doing internal type chatbots, and if you are an SAP organization, is a good platform to have a look at. Druid, Tobias is going to go through that. Druid's kind of a platform if you are a UiPath customer. Druid kind of integrates in with UiPath. Flamingo, I thought I'd throw it up there. Flamingo is actually an Australian company. They deployed some POCs into, I think, RACQ, CUA, and they're kind of doing chat bots with. So they've kind of decided, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on the insurance persona. So I'm going to create a health insurance chatbot that's been designed around health insurance. And you'll probably see a lot more of them where companies start to go, there is a market for retail. So we'll just create the retail chat persona. Don't know, like, it's kind of like a lot of the POCs haven't kind of gone anywhere. I think it was purely more so because people just got off chatbots. They didn't really see the benefit. It was just like the adoption rates were dropping, that kind of stuff. But we are seeing with these guys making it much more cheaper, people starting to kind of embed some of that into their systems from there. And there's a bunch more, like I know ServiceNow, Salesforce, they've got Einstein, they've got a bunch of other type things. But we're seeing as people try and dumb down their web UIs, they're trying to get away from the chat. The reason why chat came into place is because people thought it was too hard to navigate through a user interface or a web UI. But now that's challenged the guys who are creating interfaces to make it much more simpler. But all they've done is they've plugged in the NLP kind of algorithm on the back of that, and they're still using the chat platform. They're just not using the interface itself. Okay. So we're going to cut over the workshop, build your own chatbot, but I did promise that I was going to show some stuff around here. So let me... Okay, so this is Core, right? So, and I'm only showing this because I'm probably more familiar with Core than the other platforms, and it's probably got a good user interface. So I'll give you a bit of an example of, say, Irene, which is like a legal chatbot, right? Okay, so I'll take a seat here and I'll kind of navigate through them. So when we're talking, so Irene is a chatbot that is out there to handle unfair dismissal claims. So the whole concept was that this law